Good afternoon, dear participants. So we have come to the fifth day of our one-week International Faculty Development Program on accelerating equality and empowerment of women in all spheres. We started it on the 8th of May, and this is the 12th of May. It is organized by the Department of Management and Social Sciences, Amity University in Tashkent. Um, I'd just like to give you a gist of what we did in these days. On the first day, on 8th of May, we had Professor Vibhuti Patel, and she has been a very constant speaker and participant in our faculty development program. We also had Professor Veena Vaswani. In the second day, we had Professor Indira Ramarao, ma'am, and Dr. Supriya Banerjee. The third day, we had Professor Paromita Saha and Dr. Tara Nair. The fourth day, that was yesterday, we had Miss Anna Usha Abraham and Dr. Wahida Nainer. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the ninth session of our 5-day faculty development program. And with us, we have Dr. Linda Lane, a native of USA, is ma'am is a senior lecturer at the Department of Social Work, University of Gothenburg, Sweden. Her published research focuses the importance of social policy and categories of difference, such as gender, class, ethnicity of gender, divisions of labor. Since 2017, she is actively engaged in a research project that aims to study gender empowerment and sexual harassment prevention in workplaces. Dr. Linda, it's a pleasure to have you. If you could please unmute yourself, we are not able to hear you.
So, thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks also to Amity University for inviting me. I feel very privileged. And it's always very interesting when you hear someone say something about you that you probably wrote yourself, but you didn't exactly intend to hear it aloud. So it always makes you ask that question, is that really me? But yeah, I'm here, and thank you all very much. I've been asked to say a few words about solidarity. So I'm going to try to do that. Maybe we'll be taking a few twisty turns and, you know, kind of going down some rabbit holes, but I hope it will be interesting. And if something is unclear, please feel free to ask me any questions you may have. So if that's okay, without any further ado, I will share my screen and we can get started. Let me see.
Your screen is visible now.
Thank you. So, accelerating equality and empowerment through global solidarity. It sounds very good. And, you know, when you're talking about it, the words fall very easily in one's mouth. And you think, yeah, this is achievable. And you can also ask yourself the question of why haven't we done something about this before? So, you know, in this lecture, I'm going to try to talk about some of the reasons why meeting this goal, which is very admirable and something that we as feminists, as activists, as practitioners, academicians, we have been striving for, but we are not there yet. So in this lecture, I'm going to try to give some understandings of why we haven't met that goal, and maybe some of a few suggestions on a way forward. By no means is this the only way forward, but it's just one that I'm particularly interested in, and I think may in any case provide some helpful information, a starting point for each and every one of us to say, okay, this is something I can accept, this is something I don't like, but whatever, it makes you think, it makes you reflect on what we are doing, the way we're doing it, and the possibilities for the task we have ahead. So first of all, we talk about solidarity. And I just like to begin by reading this small quote. Solidarity is not something I do for you because you might do it for me when the time comes. No, that's called patronage. Solidarity is building collective power on the premise everything which has happened to you should happen to nobody. That is about, trying to understand who we are together and not separately as individuals. So feminist activists draw on ideas about challenging inequality through mobilization and solidarity. And what we try to do is emphasize the need to draw on collective power, the power with the group, whatever level you are on, to overcome the power of the over, that is power that is being pushed upon you, over you by dominating elites. They are everywhere. They are not just in India or in Tashkent. These kinds of dominative, I guess you could say, forms are visible everywhere in the world. And I'm going to try to give some example, or at least one longer example, about why and how this can play out in the real world. Now, social and economic change can come from individuals realizing their common interests in challenging unequal power relations and asserting their full and equal rights as members of society. But that takes time and it takes effort. So feminist solidarity and collective actions are both aimed in their own right, or aims in their own rights, to change the ways of working to obtain gender justice and women's rights everywhere. So the point I am perhaps trying to make here is that lack of solidarity, lack of gender justice and equality is not something that is just prevalent in one specific area of the world. It's everywhere. Everywhere women are less or seem to be less than men everywhere. Now, feminist solidarity and collective action go hand in hand for my part. So we have concepts and ideas that are embedded in feminist solidarity, and collective actions have relevance for development workers, for researchers, for policymakers, for practitioners working on gender issues at all levels. So we could think about this in programs when we're planning and implementation with grassroots women's organizations to further practical goals in ways which foster solidarity. And this has been spoken to, this issue of how we do that in many different ways in the course or in the presentations previously. Many of the speakers have kind of raised these issues. We should think about this in all levels when we're campaigning and trying to do advocacy work to undertake different kinds of coalitions between women's movements. And this can be on issues ranging from food security, the rights of women workers, as many have spoken to. I'm thinking about Professor Saha's presentation earlier, to protecting women victims of gender-based violence, as we heard yesterday from Dr. Naynar. So there's a lot of work to be done if we can just, come together as one, as this song says, which is, it's not that easy. And I'm going to try to kind of tease out some of that a little bit further along. Now, the concepts of feminist solidarity and collective actions are founded on beliefs about the roles of individuals in engaging with others to bring about radical visionary change, standing and acting together. So as an individual, you might not have the individual power to even address change or think about doing things for yourself, but together we can foster change, even if it takes a very long time. So collective action involves women and men discussing their lives, analyzing their shared experiences of injustice and oppression, and developing common goals. In gender and development literature on women's empowerment, for example, collective association and action is depicted as politically essential in supporting them to challenge male oppression. Now, I'm kind of intimately aware of the work that Professor Kabir has been doing, primarily because that has been the focus of my research recently, where my colleagues and I from IGNOU in Delhi have been trying to understand empowerment in different ways. What is it? How does it work? And how does it play out in the lives of everyday women in their home places? So we're, our research project is very small, but we are finding that women understand what is important for them, which is often a big headache for NGOs and other organizations who are trying to empower them from above. Women know, they understand what is right for them. They might not be able to articulate it very clearly. They might not be very well educated. They may be poor. They may live in rural areas, but they themselves know what is important for them. And I think this is one of the positions we have to take as feminists trying to do solidarity work, is to recognize that everybody's visions of what solidarity is and what empowerment is might not align with mine. It's being open to difference, yeah? So taking action to assert one's entitlement and rights may feel impossible for an individual woman or man whose lives have been shaped by economic and social factors which constrain them from taking action in isolation. But a sense of empowerment arises when collective association and collective action. So the point is, we are, this understanding oneself as being strong alone is not what is going to get us into this kind of idea of solidarity that we, as feminists and activists, kind of envision. Now, talking about collective action and solidarity is not new. There have been whole meters of books and articles and reports written about it. How can we do this and why do we do that? And we have had conferences about what is best for women, how can we go forward? And this is just to name a few. So my point here is that these discussions about solidarity, about empowerment, about trying to understand the lived lives of women and men everywhere it's not new. This is something we've been dealing with for a long time. Even if Mexico, the United Nations conference in Mexico in 1975 was maybe a big starting point, and then we had Nairobi in 1985, Copenhagen 1980, and the big daddy of them all was Beijing in 1995. Now, what we can see here is up until 1995, we had some kind of ideas about empowerment and about solidarity. But I would like to suggest that they were a little bit a bit off, because they weren't really in my frame of mind or in my way of thinking dealing with this kind of solidarity across national borders and between men and women in a more globalized world. So what do we find? Well, in 1975, in the United States, we have now the National Organization of Women and the Women's Action League, Equity League. Nothing wrong with that, except it was mostly white women. Now, I'm not saying that white women should not, engage in solidarity and should not be a part of, feminist movements. That is not the point. The point is this, now and EAO or EAL were really limited in their visions. They were exclusive. They were not inclusive of people like myself and maybe like you too. I mean, yeah. So we have to think about that. It's not that it was a negative. It was. I guess you could say it's a way of moving forward, but it was moving forward in a very limited way. We also began to see this kind of possibilities for international networking. Lots of organizations were formed, and of course, many of these were under the guise of the United Nations, which of course is great. It got a lot of people who maybe could not have been together be able to meet, because this, you have to understand, was before WhatsApp and internet and things like that. So everything was being done, either you had to do it in person or it was through, communication via letters or this kind of thing. Women in development also grew out of this era. And of course, the American context is very important here, because the Percy Amendment provided for attention to women issues in development aid. And, in this period, the United States was a major donor. They could more or less dictate the conditions for development and aid. The deal is, in some parts of the world, you couldn't say no. And why should you? If somebody's throwing free money at you, why not accept it? The point is that it was conditioned, which means, again, that the real needs of people in need were not being met. Parallel with this development, we get a growth in official government conferences, tribunes, and also you get the growth of NGOs and NGO forums who also were a part of this kind of process of gaining access to development aid, but also were, I guess you could say, they were a part of the problem in the sense that in many cases, their livelihoods were dependent on getting support from the United States or from Sweden, SIDA, wherever, which meant that they were perhaps a little bit biased in the sense for their own continued existence. They had to walk a very tight line between what they did in the field and the way they could be organized to continue to get funding. So we see this kind of budding change, but then, it's taking time, and we realize that first when we get to Beijing in 95, we get this platform of action. This was the biggest meeting of women ever, I've been told. I wasn't there, but I have colleagues who were there, and they say that the atmosphere was fabulous. Women talking to women everywhere. And the most important document that came out of Beijing conference was this platform of action, which had 12, I guess you could say, strategic objectives. Women in poverty, education and training of women, women in health, violence against women, women in armed conflict, women in economy, women in power and decision-making, institutional mechanisms for the advancement of women, human rights of women, women and the media, women and the environment, and the girl child. Now, I think we can say today, this was in 1995, this was a very brave move. And I think it should be appreciated for what it was, because it kind of laid the foundation for understanding how including the right to freedom of thought and, conscious religion and belief, those contributing to the moral, ethical, spiritual, and intellectual needs of women and men, both individually or in their communities with others, and thereby guaranteeing the possibility of realizing their full potential in society and shaping their lives in accordance with their own aspirations. Now, this is the dream, and I still think it's worth aspiring to. But there's a big difference between what we say and what we do. And I think this has been the truth of Beijing. All of the work, all of the hard work that went in to making this the conference that it was, were they really realized? So looking back, and this is very important, I'm standing in 2023 looking back at 1995 and trying to make some decision about what were the gains here, what were the challenges. So one of the things that we can note is that already by 1995, themes of equality, development, and peace had merged and gone beyond narrow definitions. So we were starting to think globally, if you so will, about population, about environment, about human rights, about peace. We can also have a general recognition that women's issues were a part of globalization themes, and the challenges that they brought with them, the kind of solutions would be complex. And that is still following us today. We understand what it did, but it didn't really solve the problems that we're facing. But we did learn some lessons from this. When we look back, we can see that there was a privileging of particular interpretations of women's needs and interests over what would reflect more accurately important social differences. So even in the best of all worlds that we can say we, could see in this idealism that arose in 1995, there was still a privileging of groups. Some members of, needs were more clearly defined. They were hierarchicalized. We made a structure. First we do this and then we do that. And this can be seen in, my next point here. We made some decisions about a compromise. First world women would get equality. Second world women would get peace. And third world women would get development. Yeah. I mean, you can understand maybe why. And this is this kind of patronage. You're standing on the outside looking in, but you don't really know what's going on the inside. You're just looking. And of course, again, it is not in I do not attempt to demean this in any way, because I think some lessons were learned that were positive. But the idea that we could compromise and categorize the needs of women in these three ways is a bit daunting. And I can think, feminists today wouldn't do that. We think differently now. There was also a lack of analysis of structural inequalities within the development process itself. We didn't look at, we often talk about this, and as an American, the first thing you learn when you're going out to work is there is no discrimination, equal opportunity applies for all. And the law says that, and that is very good. But what happens in the reality of my application? What role does my skin color play? Does my skin color actually trump my educational background? What if I had a disability? All of these things that kind of impact on us outside of the realm of the law create structures of inequality that we need to really think a lot about. And I think the lessons we can learn here is that they were not addressed in earlier, yeah. And there was also a neglect of interconnection, between social processes of capital accumulation. I'm not going to go all Marxist on you, but I really think we need to think about, okay, class formation, changing situation of women. In the Swedish context right now, we don't really talk about class anymore, which is a bit sad, because it means that many millions of men and women who struggle to get a livelihood, they have kind of denied the fact that they belong to some kind of class structure. And, in the Swedish context now, everybody's in the middle classes. So we make policy around that instead of engaging with the reality of the class formations that are still existing. Okay, they don't look the way they did when we were struggling for unionization in the 1920s and 30s, or even in the Swedish case for gender equality in the 1960s and 70s. Women are not categorized in the same way. So I'm, in the next part of this lecture, I'm going to try to talk about that a little bit. Another thing that came up in here that we learned is that improved training and education is not solving women's poverty and subordination. It doesn't help you to get education if you are denied the possibility to work. You're denied the possibility of work because of your caste, your skin color, your gender orientation, whatever. So you have a lot of people with very good educational backgrounds, but no work. So we have to think about that. It's not that I'm saying that it has been the same for everyone, but these are some of the lessons we learned after 1995, while still trying to engage with the aftermath of Beijing. Now, as I tried to point out earlier, the ideas were good. We had a kind of feminist movement, and it's been going on a long time. And I think historically we can, take from every country, we have moments when we can say, this is when it started to happen here. The minute we say that is to deny that our vision or our Yeah, Blick is very narrow. We look at what we want to see. And this has been the case in terms of feminist movements, I think, and at least in the global north. And, you know, as feminists of color, we have pointed out the holes in this kind of white feminist descriptions of women's experiences and the way they detailing the ways in which women of color, poor women, various races, ethnicities, and others experience the world differently. There was no room for us at the table. Not then. And I mean, there can be a multiple number of reasons for that. And I'm sure in the Indian context or anywhere in the world, you have the same. You know, there are those who are defining what a feminist is, how it, you know, what we do, how it looks. And at that point, not everybody is welcome. Maybe the lack of welcoming has to do with the other not really understanding that this is also for them. So they don't make a move either. So, you know, my point is that feminist movement, as conceived by those who did not take a kind of intersectionality approach, that is thinking about the way differences in class, ethnicity, race, etc., play out, actually alienates women of various groups and make them feel that the movement is not for them. Now, both within civil rights organizations and women's movement, feminist women of color have pushed advocacy groups. We have tried to make our voices heard, and I'm sure the same is in the Indian context, wherever. We have tried to, you know, make them recognize the variability in the experiences of women and people of color, and to adapt political strategies and policies to reflect this variability. Their efforts to recognize within group differences have been heralded as the most important theoretical development of the second wave feminism. And again, I'm talking primarily about the global north because that's what I know. At the same time, I think I want to point out that while we were trying to make our voices heard, it wasn't always acceptable. And I'm going to mention two groups here that I think you probably have referenced maybe sometime in your literature. The Combahee River Collective, which started in the 1970s. And they already in the beginning, you know, when they made this kind of very political collective statement that said, we do not advocate the fractionalization that white women who are separatists demand. We reject the stance of lesbian separatism because it is not a viable political analysis or strategy. It leaves out too much and far too many people, particularly Black men, women, and children. So already then there is this, you know, if now is started in 1975, the Combahee River Collective was always even there trying to make their voices heard, to kind of expand this kind of narrow definition of who was included in the movement. The statement was reiterated in Maraga and Ansala Duwa's contribution to the book, This Bridge Called My Back. If it's not a part of your curriculum, you know, if you want to do this kind of inclusive feminism, I would suggest that maybe you read it. It came out in 1981. And they point out that a solution to tokenism is not racial separatism. The strongest politics are coalition politics that cover a broad range of issues. There is no way that one oppressed group is going to topple a system by itself. Forming principled coalitions around specific issues is very important. So they're not saying that everybody everywhere have the same ideas and that everybody everywhere can build a coalition, but they're saying sometimes, and in many cases, we can build coalitions around issues that are central to us. Yeah, and I think that's a place to start. Now, the thought of policies and interventions are very important. After Beijing, we got lots of them, and they have been ongoing. We've heard about different kinds of interventions that have been supported by states, etc. More inclusive policy toward women empowerment. I think it was Professor was it Professor Nair who was talking about women empowerment in India using SGs, SHGs, or
Professor Paramita Saha.
Yeah, talking about this self-help groups. This is, kind of a part of that policy endorsement, for empowerment. Gender mainstreaming, gender budgeting. Dr. Professor Patel, you know this very intimately. Increased awareness and institutionalization of interventions for governments. New legal provisions. But blah, 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 and the beat goes on. How many policies and interventions, many policies and interventions on paper, but do they get implemented? How do they get implemented? How well do they fare in practice? So the intentions were good, and I applaud them, but it's just the follow through that I think we can find lacking. So we need to kind of move on and think about how challenges for women's movements today, what they look like and how can we go forward. So my question is, how do we return to the dynamic vision of solidarity proposed at Beijing in 1995, when all of us together, or all of you who were there together as women, made these fabulous ideas, you came together to kind of work on moving forward. But somehow along the way, I think we have kind of lost the vision. And I think we need to go back there. Not to do it the same way, but to take what it had to offer and kind of build on it in a more constructive way. We also need to address the backlash and challenges facing women movements today, and try to find some kind of common strategies of resistance. How to find a balance between recognition and respect for diversity and the acceptance of certain principles and conquests that are not negotiable, but the cultural context and the struggle for them should continue. So in reality, how do we find ways to consolidate and make more effective transnational North, South, East, West solidarity movements? And I think that is the way forward. At my own department, we try to do this in a very small way. I'm a member of an organization called GADIP. It's Gender and Development in Practice, and it's an organization composed of academics, researchers, practitioners, and we are kind of affiliated to something called WIDE Europe, WIDE Plus in Europe. But we work, our vision is to be more inclusive. So we have different kinds of programs and coordinate our activities together with, just now, the focus has been on Latin America and women working in Mexico and Peru, Colombia. But there is a vision that, here we can do things together, that the economy should not be separate from practice. Yes, one thing we've learned here is that since 1995, a lot of things have changed, things that we could not have envisioned in 1995 have come to pass. And among these is increased globalization and neoliberalism. So, I mean, in 1995, it was just maybe a vision in somebody's eye. But since then, it has really taken off. And these kinds of ways of, refashioning old struggles in terms, for example, transnational religious and popular discourses have produced new forms of racialized, class-based sexual and labor practices at local and communal scales, giving rise to new geographies of exploitation and struggle. So I usually tell my students here, you know, we live in Sweden where everybody's a consumer. H&M is the big producer of, you know, clothing and garments in here. Hennes and Mauritz, I'm sure they're somewhere around, then they're everywhere. But I usually ask my students when there is a sale going on and you can buy a t-shirt, you know, nice t-shirt for 50 Swedish crowns. Now that's very little money in the Swedish context. You should reflect on the fact that if you can buy that t-shirt for 50 crowns, somebody is not getting paid. And it is probably a woman. You know, it's the woman who sewed the t-shirt in some garment, you know, dimly lit under very poor working conditions, where she's getting paid piece by piece. It might be the farmer who had to grow the cotton or whatever. It might be the place where they had to dye the fabric, which is polluting the waters and the rivers in their own local areas. So, you know, of course, I'm not going to stop a student from buying that t-shirt, but I just want them to reflect on what it takes to get, you know, what you're getting in terms of the exploitation of someone else for that price. Now, feminist research at multiple scales, and I'm saying, you know, global, national, community, household level, and so on, have revealed the diverse social practices, ideas of gender, shifting power of the subjects of globalization are being reworked. We heard from the discussion from Dr. Nair about the way consumption has changed, the way we visualize things in the media. There's pictures of white women in dresses and aprons cooking for their husbands dressed in suits. You know, this has never been the lives of the most women in the world. That's just not the way it is. Most women have worked every day of their lives. And the sadness of this is the work they do is often not regulated, it's not counted, and their pay is yeah, don't get me sick. Yeah. So we need to kind of confront these ways and try to understand how we can defend or renegotiate the terms of these regulations that are, you know, they're really big. Globalization is just there, it's not tangible. So we need to find ways of trying to build strategies that can, you know, be broader than and help us to see what we have in common instead of what divides us. So one way of thinking about this, and it's just one way, there are many others. I started thinking a lot about this ecological thinking in terms of transnational solidarity, not so much because I read this book, but because suddenly in this age of climate change and destruction of the environment, suddenly there was a vision that maybe this is something we can think about. If we stop seeing ourselves as just Swedish people or American people or Mexican people or Indian people or Pakistani people, you know, that we are limited by our national geography. If we kind of give up that thought and kind of thinking about ourselves as being interconnected with people everywhere. So my student buying that t-shirt needs to understand the connection between himself or herself and the people who actually produce it. Yeah, so when I kind of think about it in that way, I thought this kind of ecological way of thinking was, yeah, maybe it can offer something. As a part of that, I read a text by Eckenweiler from 2012, where they talked about global solidarity, migration, and global health inequity. And I'm going to use that as a kind of way of talking about inequality a little bit further along, but it's about recognizing who we are as subjects and the way we are interdependent on others, especially in a more globalized world. I mean, we live in a 24/7 economy. You know, I can pick up my telephone and call India, and somebody there answers me, and it's, you know, it's fantastic. I don't, you know, I have a computer. I can do all kinds of, I can buy stuff. I can, you know, all of the things that make for interdependence creates possibilities for constructive change. But we have to recognize it. Because in my view, this once we recognize the interdependency between us, then we understand that we have kind of a moral responsibility to our relations everywhere else in the world. So, you know, I can buy my t-shirt. Maybe I need to think about, you know, reflect on what this is costing somebody else and how it is linked to me. And if I think that this is okay to spend so little money on that, which is so dear for the person who had to produce it. So it's Bronfenbrenner, you know, talked about this kind of ecological model a long time ago. So in many respects, this is not new, but I just thought it was kind of interesting way of helping me understand who I am in this process. Now, the problem is, you know, we kind of understand who we are. But as I've tried to show from the previous slides, there has been this kind of maybe not deliberate and probably not consolidated everywhere, this idea that we can't get along. Yeah. And Audre Lorde, you know, she kind of gave the statement, and I think it makes sense to me, and I use it a lot in slides because I like it. She wrote, as women, we've been taught either to ignore our differences or to view them as causes for separation and suspicion rather than as forces for change. Those of us who stand outside the circle of the society's definition of acceptable women know what struggle is, or we know that struggle is not an academic skill, so you can't teach it. It is learning how to take our differences and make them strengths. Because the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And you know, every time I read it, I think it's so profound because she's letting us know that somewhere we can't be in subordination and think that those who subordinate us, who dominate us, wish us well and just going to say, hey, take your freedom and go. They're not going to do that. We have to struggle as a collective together to bring about the changes that we want to see. So yeah, she's kind of one of my house goddesses. To understand why these differences, you know, get in the way, and why we are suspicious of each other, whether it's, you know, again, brown, Black women and white women, you know, LGBT community versus a cis community, whatever. There is a lot of things that we need to work out. And, you know, I'm going to say a few words about intersectionality because that's what I like. And I like the way that it offers me a way of thinking about how difference can be an advantage, that I don't have to see difference as a liability. Now, the front figure for, you know, for feminist intersectionality is Kimberly Crenshaw, who already in the late 1980s was trying to understand why American law could not generate, you know, kind of justice for women of color in the labor market. She was working really in labor, you know, she was a lawyer. And she was, you know, because the problem was the law could see only one thing at a time. It could see gender. Yes. Are you a woman and you are discriminated as a woman, then you have gender discrimination. But it couldn't see, you know, or if you were racially discriminated or discriminated on the basis of your ethnicity, that they could see, but separate in a different law. So you had these kind of chimneys of difference that, you know, that we're not communicating with each other. And she, you know, her idea was to kind of help people to understand, I am not just a woman, I have a skin color. I have a sexual orientation. I have a social economic class. I have an ability. I have a religion. I have age. All of these things together make me who I am. In certain instances, all of these things play out in my daily life. Not all of them all at once, but just acknowledging that I am more than my gender opens up for the opportunity to see how multiple identities interact and complicate each other to affect any individual's experience. It always, it's not one way that I'm not, oppressed because in all ways because of my race. I am not always privileged because of my gender. The point is no one can be defined by only one of their identities. And she made a statement, I think, that kind of impacts the way we think about solidarity as well. She says, if you see inequality as something for somebody else, oh, they are the unfortunate others, those there over there, then there is a problem. And the problem is probably with you. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I just want to just kind of talk about these kind of levels of intersectionality that Crenshaw breaks up. And I name these because often when we talk about intersectionality, we have this idea that it's, in the Swedish word for it is flummig. And that means that it's so blurred with so many things that we really can't differentiate what is the A and what is the B. But by kind of looking at it and this, peeling back, trying to give a clear view of where she's standing on these issues, I think it can help. Now, she talks about structural intersectionality. And here she refers to the experiences of people within a particular identity category are qualitatively different from each other, depending on their intersecting identities. And the example we often use is how immigrant status and unemployment shape domestic violence. And after listening to Professor Naynar's presentation the other day about domestic violence, we know, first of all, being an immigrant, moving from from one country to another, or a kind of internal migration, it is a problem. You're out of your place, you're out of your home, and being unemployed raises the issue, the likelihood of domestic violence. We see it in Sweden as well. And I'm sure COVID-19 was kind of an eye-opener for many people when you suddenly had people in close proximity to each other. She talks about political intersectionality and how it concerns with the multiple disadvantages of groups, and it shapes the construction of collective ideas. And here again, I would, refer to Dr. Naynar's presentation, where, as she pointed out, and maybe in the Indian case, if you come from an upper class background, the likelihood of you being heard by the police is much greater than if you are per person, So it's not just in the West, which is, we have this kind of missing white woman syndrome, a white woman goes missing, everybody's out looking for her, Black person, brown person, oh, well, maybe she'll show up someday. So there's a difference in the way we deal with people depending on how we frame their collective identities. And then there's, of course, she talks about representational identities, intersectionality, focusing in on stereotypical images of people. And I think Dr. Abraham also lifted a lot of this in her talk. So, it's just a way of understanding how difference and the way things intersect with each other make a difference. Quickly, Patricia Hill Collins' argument, still kind of one of the grand old ladies of intersectionality. But I think here point two is what I focused on a lot. She talks about interlocking social institutions and have relied on multiple forms of segregation to produce unjust results. So this kind of connects us back to these ideas of the ecological thinking, because we are thinking again about how interdependency and how we are interconnected with each other, how they together produce, the the response of inequality and just lack of justice for the lower, categories of people, or in terms of class, caste, or ethnicity, if you so will. Now, intersectionality kind of helps us understand a few things. It doesn't answer all the questions. It doesn't give us, it's not a guide to where we're going. It just says, if you think about these things, maybe you see the way those who are dominating us, those who are suppressing us, actually work. So, just understanding these experiences of oppression, etc., can help us in many ways. Now, to try to illustrate this, I talked about it, and this is a terrible PowerPoint, so we don't have to go through all of it. But I just wanted to talk about, again, this kind of interconnectedness between the north and the south, east and west, whatever you want to talk about. I could have kept using this kind of garment industry or manufacturing industry, as a scenario, as a way of framing it. But I chose to deal with something that I know intimately, because I do research around this area, and looking at the care drain. What we are seeing today, because of globalization, neoliberalism, is an unprecedented migration of care workers and healthcare workers from low and middle income countries to the affluent north. Now, we would think that, well, this is unfair. This is about, not getting justice for the things we think are important, because it means that countries who are in need of their health caregivers lose them to more affluent countries, creating shortages there, which means that the possibility of achieving SDGs become more and more limited. Now, this has a lot to do with these neoliberal economic policies that, say, oh, great, come on over to doctors and nurses. And I mean, you cannot fault a person for wanting to have a better life. So when young people say they want to go to America to work as doctors, or they want to go to the UK to be nurses, often as parents, we might think we are proud to have this opportunity. And the fact that they do, they feel, this need to move, maybe we need to reflect on, how do we deal with that in our own environment? Is it because I won't miss their care as their parents? I won't miss their care because I have the economic wherewithal to purchase somebody else's care. But what about the ones who do not? So I'm not, I'm just kind of pointing out that the economic conditions for migration that create these drains also are not just something that is propagated on us by the global north. In the global south, we contribute too. We contribute because we want our kids to do well. We need remittances. We need all of those things that make a difference. Now, okay, what do we do about this? In the COVID pandemic, we saw the results, the consequences of this, where our, people were dying because of a disease or an illness, and we didn't have enough care personnel to take care of them. And it's not because always we are not educating enough people. It's quite simply because the people you are, me and everybody, are paying taxes for, they are in somebody else's home. So for those who are interested, you can read this, but my point here is that this interconnectedness between sending and receiving, going and coming, there is no way of just saying, well, this is only happening, I'm not involved because migration is taking place and draining the brain and healthcare workers of my country. We are. And somewhere along the line, I think we have to kind of think about how can we be more solidaric together? So, you know, I use this kind of thing called it solidarity light, because often when we think about solidarity, we want to be good, we want to do it right, but then it gets too close to home. You know, it's something about me. And then suddenly I have to make a decision. How do I want to do this? One way that these two researchers, Held and Robinson, look at it is that, you know, it should be the task of governments to provide enough care for everyone in ways which unpaid or low paid work sustains cycles of exploitation and inequality should be eliminated. So maybe we should kind of, you know, when we are missing our care, and this is just an example, maybe we should be working with the government to say we need more policies about keeping them here because our tax dollars are actually paying for their education. Is this the only way to go? Of course not. But I think if we think about this in terms of this ethic care, this requirement of to be responsible, not only here, but there, because we are interconnected, maybe that can help us find solutions. Maybe. Now, my task was to talk about global solidarity. And I'm going to say right now, I'm make it a little detour, because I'm not so sure that global solidarity is the word I'd really want to use. Not because it's not a, you know, I mean, it's out there, but I just feel that transnational feminism or transnational feminist solidarity brings more to the table. I could be wrong, but, you know, again, it's my own personal experience, and this is where I am right now. So the reason I'm so involved in this is because it really kind of takes on board this kind of precariousness of globalization and tries to understand how it has created all of these kind of challenges for feminist solidarity. Globalization, you know, it's been good as well. I mean, as I pointed out previously, we get all of this technology, which not only, you know, can make for problems, but it allows us to do things like we're doing today. It allows me to be a part of an educational process that's taking part long way away, where I don't really understand the time zone, etc. But it makes it possible for us to do this. At the same time, it kind of incorporates the critical insights of post-colonial, third world, and ethics of care feminists in a positive vision of transnational feminist solidarity. It takes, you know, it helps us to understand how this connectiveness we share can be addressed. Now, okay, this is just, as I said, one way of thinking, but there are, I thought if I'm going to say I'm going to take a step away from the global, then maybe I should just say something about what the differences are. So first of all, a transnational approach is sensitive to differences between and among women, which means, again, you get this kind of possibility for understandings of intersectionality. There is not just one global sisterhood. You know, we all fit in under the same umbrella. But what it can do is that we can point out different processes that are based on global and social differences and social locations, so that we can acknowledge that many of the aspects of globalization actually benefit some women, while it also unduly burdens many others. So just having those eyeglasses on makes a big difference. Secondly, it is political in nature. And that's the road I want to go. Yeah, I want to think about the fact that transnational feminism is grounded in a political commitment. It's not just me, it's a political commitment, such as to challenge injustice and oppression. That is important. It is based on these shared commitments rather than on a common identity. So, maybe we can't find this kind of universal umbrella where everybody fits in, but we can find areas of solidarity where we have experience and where we together can work against injustice and oppression. It also emphasizes and enables feminists to resist oppressive conditions that manifest themselves differently in different geographical locations, but are nonetheless prevalent in many countries. And this is, of course, I find very interesting around issues of racialized violence against women. Third, transnational feminists focus on specific globalization processes. So, such as the growth of offshore manufacturing and global care chains, rather than theorized global patriarchy. Now, I'm not saying that patriarchy is not there. I'm just saying that maybe by looking at, for instance, this example of care, we can see that we can make it tangible because we are affected by it. Maybe here in these things that are tangible for us, we can make a move forward. The same around the garment industry. We are impacted when cotton doesn't grow because of it takes too much water, and the dyeing of garns pollute our air and water. All of these things impact us, even if we don't buy that t-shirt, or even if we don't participate in global care chains. We can visualize it. It becomes something tangible for us. So, what are you going to do? Globalization is here to stay. We won't be getting rid of it anytime soon. The challenges are still there. We need to, try to seek to develop conceptions of justice and responsibility. As globalization will certainly continue, the challenges are likely to increase. The challenge of how to make globalization fairer remains a task for feminists, as well as all others who strive for equality and justice. So, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So, what are we going to do? And, I'm no guru, but, you work every day and you have ideas about how you think we might be able to do some of this. So for me as a feminist, trying to address global solidarity, I think we need to throw off the inherited concepts and vocabularies, as well as advisories. We need to stop listening to people who don't mean us well, to put it simply. We need to start thinking about ourselves and use language and vocabulary that actually describes who we are and what we do. Keeping in mind that all theories, all practices do not travel well. Now, I'm very enthralled with this idea of intersectionality. I am also aware that it has gotten, trying to travel to around the world, it has been interpreted and reinterpreted in many ways that I would not find, interesting. Reconsider. If you think intersectionality is something that is foreign to you, indigenous practice is maybe a good way to go, because I think at that point you realize that even if you don't call it intersectionality, it's about who we are together and understanding how we relate to each other. So you don't have to, you don't have to use that word. Don't buy everything. We need to redefine, as well as rename categories. We need to think about new ways, new categories to express forms of solidarity, and how we hope to achieve it as well. So I will just end by saying that the aim is not to become victims of vocabulary and nomenclature that oppress as well as misdirect us from achieving our goals. So if it doesn't work, don't force it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. It was a wonderful presentation, and we are really glad to know a global perspective on feminist solidarity and collective action. I really loved the fact, the way you explained us the sales perspective, where we never used to think that when we are buying something on a sale, we are getting it at the cost of somebody's exploitation and probably, or even if it is a man. There are a few questions that we have in the question answer section here. The first one is from Ms. Girija. She says that it is an insightful presentation. However, recently has backed away from implementing the feminist foreign policy. Is it not a setback for furthering the gender issues?
Yes, it is. And here again, I mean, this is, Sweden is not isolated. It's a part of, this global movement. And one of the things that we have noticed here, just to go back to this kind of global care chain thing, when people come here from other countries, they're coming to do work. They don't think that they are creating a problem for the people who are already doing that work in Sweden. So nurses coming from outside, really good, not a problem. But they are willing often to work for lower wages, lower, working conditions, increased precarity. They don't want a full-time job, or maybe they don't want a permanent job. That puts pressure on, employed nurses, doctors, practitioners here. How can they, work for increased wages when you can purchase the work or the service of a nurse or somebody from abroad? This has created, not just this, but it's a combination of other issues around labor market. You're starting to get this growth of a kind of xenophobia, which is not just something in Sweden, but in Europe in general. It's too many of those people from outside. There has been a lot of hate around migrants and migrant issues. The laws around migration has changed, and Sweden has gotten a new right-wing government. A part of that government, well, it's not really sitting in the government, but backing that government is a right-wing organization who has this idea, Swedish people should not look like me. They have a lot of power, and we're seeing that. So yeah, they were able to frame a law or an amendment, which meant that we had to withdraw this feminist. They kind of sugarcoat it and say, well, we don't need to call it feminist because, it is what it is. But we all know that the minute you take away that, it's no longer what it is. So it's a combination of many things, but it is absolutely true.
On the same lines, there's another question by Sanjukta Basu, who was asked about how can we build the feminist solidarity amidst global rise of right-wing populism, which foregrounds identity politics and other sizes of people based on various identities.
Yeah, but this is one of the things I hope maybe I didn't do it very clearly, but this one of the big points I've tried to make is that they want to sow seeds of destruction. The whole idea is to keep us apart, to keep us from, understanding what we have in common. It's better to say, it's Black people over here, queer people over here, brown people over here. They don't understand, they just want to get policies for Black people or brown people or whatever. Instead of, and we listen because it's easier. We don't understand, and as I think that Audre Lorde we need to not see our differences as a problem. We have to understand them as something challenging, of course. We will not solve everything always in the same way, but we have to see what we bring to the table with my Black identity and brown identity. All of these things we can negotiate when we meet, but if we don't meet, we won't negotiate because we won't find each other. And here I'm thinking, even if we've seen the growth of a lot of right-wing governments and, they are pushing an agenda that is really detrimental to women and gender and to feminist movements everywhere. The same tools that give them space, we can use too. And I think this is what was reiterated at the presentation the other day. The internet is not just for the right wing. It is not just for those. It is, we can use all of those tools to make our case heard as well. So yeah, it's hardcore right now, but I'm still optimistic.
Another question from Ms. Neelu Costa is, can you please explain the transnational feminist in national perspective, as the problems in each country are unique and need to be specifically taken?
Yeah, that is true. But on the other hand, every problem within national boundaries are not bound by that boundary. So we can have common issues across boundaries. And as I tried to point out with this kind of care issue, what happens when you send carers to Sweden impacts what happens in the sender country in many different ways. So of course it is connected on that issue, but it might not be so that we have a common problem that would be the same always in Sweden, say, for example, and for example, India. So we have to find those areas where we can see and work on things that are together, that we have in common. And maybe we have to let those broader issues go for another time. The point is we shouldn't not cooperate in solidarity simply because we can't agree on everything. That's my point.
Any other questions?
I think वो दोनों कर लो.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. It was absolutely wonderful and giving us a global perspective about solidarity and feminism, how intersectionality needs to be more augmented. Social identities need to be addressed across the globe. So any more questions, Dr. Shanti?
I think they are just the participants who are appreciating ma'am's presentation. Thank you so much. It was an enlightening session. Thank you, ma'am. Very well said. We need to talk about each other from various political groups, identity communities.
And all those who are asking for the presentation, we have shared in the group also. Constantly asking for your presentation. So we have shared it twice. I've shared in the chat.
Okay, thank you all for listening. It's been a pleasure. If anybody wants to contact me, I think my e-post address is with Professor Banerjee. So until then, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll share it in the chat box.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. And we also invite you to stay with us because we'll be having the closing session in 1 hour and 30 minutes after the session that we are going to start now with Dr. Farah Naqvi. I hope ma'am has also joined us, and then we'll be having her session in a few minutes now. So all the participants, please note, today we are going to conclude this international FDP. This is the last session, but of course not the least by any means. So we shall be having this session to start now, and after that, all of us will be joining along with all the resource persons, the valedictory session in which our dignitaries will also be joining us. So we take this opportunity to welcome our next speaker, and yes, ma'am, Dr. Farah Naqvi, we welcome you, and you're taking us to another horizon of being international learning collaboration. You're joining us from Kuwait. We welcome you, ma'am, and we wish to introduce you first to all the participants. Dr. Farah Naqvi is a learning and development professional and professor of human resource management. Currently, she is working with Knox Management Kuwait as Head of Learning and Development and Adjunct Professor HRM with the American University of Kuwait. In her career span of over 16 years, Dr. Farah has worked with several top-tier universities and companies in different professional capacities, including the Swiss Institute of Management and Innovation, Switzerland, IIM Ahmedabad, GCUE Kuwait Center for Organization Development, Hyderabad, IBS Hyderabad, and NSRIC Inc. Canada, and IBA Bangalore. Dr. Farah is a research supervisor, Global Executive MBA program with Liverpool John Moores University, England. She was associated with the Central University of Tamil Nadu in India as external examiner of the PhD programs. We welcome you, Dr. Farah, and request you to kindly take our journey ahead in this FTP. Ma'am. Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I so look forward to being here. I'm just trying to share my screen and then we'll begin my presentation.
Yeah, ma'am.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. Visible career path of working women. Yes, it is there.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, greetings to everybody here, to the esteemed panelists and all the participants. I really feel grateful to be a part of this conference. Though I could not attend the sessions of other participants because of working days being here. And that's why I scheduled my session on Friday because it happens to be a holiday here. My special greetings to Dr. Vibhuti ma'am for giving me a chance to be a part of this great ongoing discussion that is going around pertinent issues. What I will be talking around is around the career path of working women, how different factors kind of enable them to take up their careers and succeed in their careers, and what different factors act like barriers to their career development. So, just a minute. I don't know why this picture is coming like this. Okay, so before I go into describing what how the career of a woman looks like, what kind of challenges they face and everything, it's very important that I briefly present how I am describing the career like. So generally when we talk of career, so career is like a pursuit of a consecutive progressive achievement in public, professional or business life. If we see it in more life encompassing way, you know, as a broader way, so we see that career is basically a sum total of decisions that direct your educational, social, economic, political, and spiritual endeavors that reflect your unique personality and basic life values. So if we go by this broad definition, we see that career is not merely about having a job and earning income, but it is a means to pursue growth in life, to take positions that are deserving of one's education, experience, and the effort a person has put in his or her life. So with this, we are reminded of a very important thing, that do women specifically in their lives get equal opportunity to pursue a career, or they merely hold jobs driven by circumstances? Because many times we see that a woman has taken up her education, is doing really well, then she gets settled, starts her life, and then she's told, okay, considering the family responsibilities or XYZ extraneous factors, you take up, what if you don't take up this job as of now, you take up a easier job, or you work for a lesser time, or you, so they make career shifts which are not always discretionary. They are sometimes driven by circumstances. So that this raises us, but whenever we talk of career, so career should be something that should always be deserving of, or matches at least with the kind of education or experience a person has put, and accordingly how the person wishes to take it forward in life. So this is one aspect I wanted to talk about, since I was going to talk about career enablers and these factors. So if we see, a typical career is depicted like, it has two phases. So which is given by a steady climb towards commercial success. We start a career, we start rising in our career, we achieve some degree of fame, we get a position of authority and power, and then we give continued effort to the service or profession in which we are in. So this is how a general career looks like. But for women, the career looks slightly different, because it is in the first half of their lives that they spend balancing their professional growth with serving and caring for variety of others, needs of others, like children, parents, communities. And it's only in their, like, after the 30s or so, that they get the chance to kind of prioritize their voice, their ambitions and things. Because initial phase, many women, research indicates that they feel trapped, because in trying to balance, and this not only happens that specific to a given structure, this is happening globally across different sectors. So this model I have drawn from this work by E.W. Cox. Her article was published in Forbes. So when she talks about careers, she says that a woman's career has typically 4 phases. And basically these 4 phases, where the 20s, she says, is marked by the phase of ambition, where, when she is like maybe doing her graduate degree or doing some internship or something, and then she starts to kind of visualize what she wants to do in her life. She's ambitious, she wants to achieve many things, considering that. Then comes 30s. In 30s, many women, she says, experience what we call culture shock. And why she used the term culture shock is because where the potential that she has nurtured in herself by virtue of her education and learning suddenly comes in clash with the pressures of the society, which is maybe parenting responsibility or all these kinds of how the system is not supporting her needs. And then it's only in the 40s that some women get a chance to re-accelerate their career, focus once again on their career priorities and build on the foundation. Some women are able to do it successfully, while others may not, because if their career break happens to be maybe more than 6 years or so, then maybe they find it really difficult to come back to the companies. There are many companies, however, now who are giving this option of, career after family, where women are getting a chance, even if they have a break, they can come back to their careers. But again, many companies have put in the gap of, let us say, 5 years or 3 years. So many women have gaps more than that, and eventually they don't get that chance. So this is she called the stage of re-accelerating, chance to re-accelerate your career. And then comes the 50s, where it's a self-actualization kind of stage, where the empty nesters, where the children are kind of settled now. So then the peak career decade. So this is how she says the career of a woman differs from that of men. Also, looking at this decision tree model, it says that unlike a men's career, a woman's career is influenced by multiple factors, and it is not an independent decision that she can take. It is influenced by the interests of her family members, the kind of encouragement, support, all these the organizational support and policies. All these factors influence to what extent a woman is able to take up her career. So this is one aspect. Now, here I would just share findings of my own research. This research was inspired from a week-long training program we had at Center for Organization Development, Hyderabad. So where a week-long program was on work-life balance issues specifically, where women had raised concerns on different kind of issues that they face. Post that, we decided, okay, we should do some kind of research into this. And a research paper was subsequently published by Indian Journal of Gender Studies. So in this study, we investigated the changing role and status of women managers in the new economic environment. And we found out what are the factors, enablers, and barriers that they experience in their work. So before I go to the findings, I will quickly brief over what was the methodology that we had adopted. So we had conducted long interviews, and each interview lasted for around 45 minutes or something. And in this, basically, the idea of taking long interviews was to identify the shared mental categories among participants, because many times when you get a questionnaire filled, so you get just a surface level view of the data. But when you go for long interviews, so, okay, I am not having family support, or I'm not able to balance, but then why you are not able to balance? So you can probe further and get deeper insight. So that's how we decided that this will give the respondents the chance to tell their own story, their own experiences in their own voice. And keeping that in mind, we chose the long interview method. So briefly, when we selected respondents, I followed McRacken's technique that says less is sometimes more. When you are going for a stratified sampling in which you are very sure about the kind of respondents you want to respond to your questions, then sometimes having lesser sample and detailed investigation is a better option. So that was the strategy behind choosing the women respondents. And each of these women respondents were asked common questions. And these common questions were like, give a brief introduction about yourself, your background, what are the challenges and issues you experience at home and at workplace, what are your aspirations, what do you think are the key competencies required for effective role performance and that makes a woman successful, why do you think there are such few women at top level positions? So these were some of the kind of questions that were asked to the respondents. And now I'll share about the respondents. So if you see, most of the respondents, 70% of them had experience between 0 to 10 years, while 30% have above 10 years of experience. These are all qualified women having 68% had a BTech degree, 30% were having a postgraduate degree, and some had higher professional qualifications like ICWA and CS and CA, things like that. Majority of them were married, and 98% of them had kids also. So this is how the respondent framework looked like. So what were the themes that we identified now? The themes that we identified came out from their responses were, first was the role of parents. Like, it came out that parents occupy a critical role in how the girls will see themselves shaping their career or how they aspire. So research indicates, and also the responses of these women indicated that parents occupy a very unique and critical place in the transition of networks of young people. So where parents engaged with the career planning and with their adolescents when they are in grade 12 and above. So it led to greater career certainty, less indecision, and more career salience, stronger ego identity. Many times we noticed that some of the women shared that this kind of discussions did happen at their home, but with their brothers and not with them. So for them, career was important, but it was like, it's okay if it is there, it's okay if it is not there. But the same kind of planning was taken up very seriously with respect to their sibling who happened to be a brother. So the role of parents also provides a sense of career certainty, and it's really important that parents of a girl child equally involve and invest not only in the education of the girl child, but in the career planning, so that she also experiences that certainty, the sense of ambition and planning that she needs to engage at that stage. Another thing was the impact of higher education of parents. So it was found that parents who were having higher educational qualification, like some of them who had taken post-graduation or doctoral degrees, they were investing more in terms of, they were having more higher educational aspirations from their children also. And subsequently, they were passing it on to their children, both the girl and the boy child in the family. The third finding that I would just like to bring it here was the trade-off that was happening between marriage and career with respect to women. So majority of these women managers, I would just emphasize that all of these women were working at managerial positions now, and they all reflected a sense of regret for not being able to take a step further for their career. Because they said, had we been given 2 more years and our marriage had been delayed, let us say by 2 or 3 more years, then I would have done my MTech in this specialization. and then I would have joined at the next higher level. So these kind of things were coming up in the responses. And similarly, a collaborative study was jointly organized by 4 study partners by International Center for Research on Women by Washington, DC, and by Foundation for Research in Health Systems, Gujarat, and Maharashtra and Bangladesh. So it was a cross-cultural study. It found that there was a trade-off happening between marriage and education, where it was many a times not occurring simultaneously, and decision of one was affecting the others. For example, okay, the girl is interested in studying, but just because she had reached the marriageable age, so sometimes marriage was prioritized instead of career. So this was a sense of regret that many respondents and women had expressed. Now, this is with respect to women, again, here, like how women were prioritizing their own careers. So again, this study was like women are unlikely to relocate for their own careers, but when it comes to relocation, they were ready to disrupt their own careers to relocate for supporting the career of their husband. And this had happened. And because of that, sometimes they end up losing out on opportunities had they stayed in the same organization or taken an opportunity for themselves in another organization. So what is interesting about it is that there is no laws or legal regulations binding the woman. Okay, you have to first think about the career of your husband or something like, but the societal conditioning is such that women were doing it spontaneously and out of choice, where they were choosing to put the careers of their husbands first and putting their career secondary. So they were ready to interrupt their career because of children or domestic issues, but the husband's career was not disrupted. So here, right side, I have put original case transcripts also. For example, if you see this woman who said, I'm basically from Coimbatore, did my BTech, MS, and MBA, 19 years of experience to my credit. My father was himself a PhD and encouraged me for higher studies. I'm in this company since past 15 years. Earlier, I was working at Bangalore. I got my seat transferred because of my husband, who is a scientist. Otherwise, I was being sent for an assignment abroad. So then she's telling about which standard her daughter is studying, and then how she forego an assignment abroad because she wanted to support her family, and the husband's career cannot be compromised. Another was the aspirations that women have for themselves. So apart from career ambitions, being every woman had this common aspiration that they wanted to be a good mother. And this is very natural. It comes to us spontaneously. The moment you become a mother, you want to be a good mother. Every woman wants to do that. So chances, every woman was like, if there is some problem or something, I am ready to give up on my career because for me, my family is more important. So the first aspiration that many of them were keeping was to be good mother and role model for the child. And 70% of the respondents shared this as one of their major aspirations. When asked, what are the major aspirations you have for yourself? So this was one of the major aspirations. I'm not saying that this is a negative aspiration. This is very important because as mothers, we raise the next generation. So it is a very important aspiration, but this discussion is about how we can create systems that she can carry out both the aspirations simultaneously, support systems where both the aspirations are taken care of. So yeah, there is something that was stopping all of these women from dreaming big. And now what is that thing? So for example, I have put before all of you these 2 transcripts. So I was asked, how do you see yourself after a few years down the line? So like one woman said, I see myself as a DGM after 5-6 years. So I asked, okay, why don't you aspire to be at the GM level? So she takes a deep breath and she gives a shy, astonished look and starts laughing. Similarly, another woman said, I want to get my promotions on time and go up to the position of general manager, which is the highest position in their company. She expressed it and I felt happy about it. But immediately after that, she giggled and kind of smiled that her confidence was not there. And she knew it was kind of something, maybe an impossible kind of dream that she was putting for herself. So what is that, and only 2 women dare to dream up till this level out of all the managers. Otherwise, they were content in balancing their home and family instead of setting higher goals for themselves. So why does it happen so? And what is that something that prevents women from dreaming big? So that brings us to an interesting thing, and I would like to support my thing with the research here that says that many girls, they experience a loss of voice, and there are factors internal, which is intrapsychic, and external or real world barriers outside that prevent them from dreaming big and achieving things in life. And regarding this loss of thing is a loss of voice is that they experience an alienation from their authentic, spontaneous selves at about the age of 11, which is particularly dramatic. So what I'm talking about loss of voice is that when girls hit puberty or around the age of 12 to 13 years, so the kind of conditioning or the environment and the support, that's the stage of transition for a girl child. And the kind of conditioning that is done in society that tells, okay, how her next phase of life will look like, or what she should be how she should see herself, or what kind of dream she can build for herself. Sometimes they are conditioned in a way that, okay, she's a girl, her primary this thing will be to study well, then get married, find a good family, take care of the home. So even, and let us say at that very age, that girl had started to develop interest in certain subjects, like be it science or be it whatever so that clashes with the conditioning that she gets at home and what she is trying to build in herself from school and college. This leads to a sense of what we call loss of voice and clash between kind of internal conflicts in the girl child. This happens more so at the rural sector, but does happen in the urban areas too. So high academic achievement is emphasized more with respect to boys than with respect to girls. And that is one of the reasons that prevents women from dreaming big, perhaps. So this was one of the theme identified. Another reason was, I can't dream big as family is first. Okay, so women unconscionably shoulder the burden of being the primary household manager or the caregiver, and because of which they compromise on many opportunities that they get at workplace. For example, this lady shared that in her work, field visits are very common, but if she goes out on field visits or sometimes work that requires her to stay overnight at other location, that creates a lot of dissonance and problems that managing things at her home. So because of which she tries to take a back seat so that things at home doesn't get disturbed. So and that definitely affects their career advancement and career growth and career opportunities that they are likely to get in future. Now, so the challenges that they face at work and at home are like managing. Number one challenge that came out was managing their dual role as organizational managers and housewives, as major share of the unpaid work was falling on their shoulders, taking care of, everything around the house, what is to be cooked, what is to be, who is going where at what time, who is returning from where at what time, and planning the house stuff or taking care of the elderly. All the kind of responsibilities and organizing responsibilities are falling on their shoulders. This unpaid work that many of the speakers must have already talked about. Then 20% of them were happy about the support they were getting from their, let us say, because they were staying in joint families, they were happy about the support they were getting from their elderly parents in terms of being there for the child. But majority said that they were not getting much help. Instead, it was also an added responsibility. And often if they were not able to do certain things in a certain way, that led to kind of spoiling the environment in the family, and all those things were shared. Another factor that came out was there are certain jobs where men are intentionally given preference, and these are jobs where men were given more physical jobs that require more physical work, so their men are given more preference. For example, like one lady shared that she had done everything from the beginning to the end worked on a project, but since that project required great degree of traveling and some degree of physical work, so she was involved from scratch to the middle, but in the last stage that was handed over to a male counterpart. So this is also one sad part. And another theme that came out was the informal networks. Now, what are these informal networks? Many times we all are working women, so we see that in organization, many things happen which are openly communicated and happen through maybe written or policy documents, but many things happen over grapevine, what we say, communication. So what happens in such a case is that women, if they are not present in, let us say, informal meetings or in employee engagement activities, or let us say any outbound activities arranged by the company, so they miss out on many key information. For example, let us say a company is engaging in succession planning about who will be the next leader, how things are going to change within the department, so how it is likely to affect them. They are the last ones to know about it because they are not so active part of informal network, because they come on time, they leave on time, and their mind is also equally distracted managing things at home and at work. So this was one aspect. Yeah, and yes, this question was asked to women respondents, like, what do you think are the competencies that make a woman succeed at work? So as we all know, competencies doesn't refer merely to job knowledge, but it refers to multi factors like, the attitude, the skill that you bring to your work, the kind of, it's like an iceberg. Competencies, when we talk of competencies, we often talk about the iceberg model, where we only see the tip of the ice, but a lot of things are below that. Similarly, when we talk of competencies, a job requires a variety of things, maybe communication skills, maybe the kind of attitude, the kind of knowledge, the skill set. All these things make a person successful in a given career. And for each role, that is why we are building competency frameworks now when we do our learning and development work. So when women were asked, what are the competencies do you think make a woman succeed? So I gave suggestions also. So these were some of the competencies that they came on the table, like good performance, good lively nature, good networking, ambitious, and talent, and all those things. But one very interesting point was majority of them said what makes the woman succeed is one simple factor, which is good family support. And more than 70% of the respondents clearly kept on emphasizing on good family support as one of the key things that decide whether the woman will be able to succeed or build her career or not. So now let us look at how the picture looks like in India. And we see that India ranks third in the world for working women in senior positions, which is kind of good news compared globally. And COVID impacted women, and many women believe that post-COVID, the working practices is going to benefit the women, wherein maybe because of hybrid work and all these things getting introduced. So they felt that this is going to benefit the women to further stay in the career and develop in their careers at the workplace. Now, this data is like post-pandemic, this data was collected to figure out by, how the pandemic impacted job losses in men and women. And it was found that this data is from the Center for Monitoring in University, CMIE, and it indicated that several women lost their jobs and didn't found new ones. And the unemployment rate shooted up heavily for women to 17%, which was more than double the rate for women. So we all can figure out the reasons why this must have happened. This is what the data revealed. Now, looking at the picture specific to India, the Global Gender Gap Report, if we see that India slipped 28 places in the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report. and it was ranked 148th among the 156 nations. And if you see, the Global Gender Gap report covers these 4 factors that are economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. So we see we are not doing so bad when it comes to educational attainment and health and survival. But where we are not faring so well is economic participation and opportunity and political empowerment. The speaker, Professor Linda, she was just talking about the role of coalitions and political environment and policies and how they affect women. So that ends up influencing the career trajectories of women also. Now looking at participation in paid activities and unpaid activities. So we see a lot of unfair burden of paid activities is falling on women. So if you see this particular graphic that I have put here, you see that this is the rural side of picture and this is the urban side. And we see, as per the economic survey, 85% of participation in unpaid activities, women participation is 85% compared to that of rural male. And even in urban areas, the participation of females is around 81% compared to that of just 35% of an urban male. Similarly, if you see, look at the paid activities now. Paid activities refers to any activities where we get paid for our work. So we see here, rural male, they are having participation rate of 53% and urban male having 58%, whereas women are in paid activities, their participation is merely below 20%, which is 17.7 with respect to rural male and 15.5% with respect to urban female. So what is happening here is, what I want to point out here is 92% of the women in the age bracket of 15 to 60 years, they participate in unpaid domestic activities daily compared to only 29% of the men. So this clearly tells us that the entire burden is falling on the shoulders of the women in majority of the homes. So, and why we need to discuss this unpaid work is because it has its consequences. Like what kind of consequences? This data tells us that globally, it has been noted that for every 2-hour increase in the amount of unpaid work that a woman undertakes, labor force participation rate drops by 10%. So just imagine 2 more hours of unpaid work leads to a 10% drop in labor force participation rate of women. So this is an important indicator, and not only to tell us about a present circumstance, but also to guide us what kind of support systems need to be built at the societal level, at the organization level, and what kind of policies need to be developed so that this labor force participation rate can be maintained. Now, this is a very interesting data I would like to share. This is there in this International Labour Organization and Gallup, they conducted a study where women and men in 142 countries, they were asked whether they preferred for women to work in paid jobs, care for their families and homes, or do both. So this was the question that was asked to them. And it was, if you look at the data, majority, here is the data of the world, and here is the data with respect to India. Let's look at the data of the world, global data. So it says that 27% of women themselves think that their job is to stay at home, do home care, and take care of their families. And 29% men think that yes, women should stay at home and take care of their families. Now the condition is little worse in India, and this is really saddening that 41% of the women believe in India that their job is better to stay at home, do housework, and care for their families. So if you see, the women themselves are conditioned when they are being nurtured as a girl child in a family in terms of the education and opportunities. If they are themselves conditioned, so accordingly, it determines the kind of career choices they will make and career decisions that they will take in future. Now, looking at this one more data by this is with respect, this has been taken from Business Insider 2020 report. that talks about the female graduate in STEM fields like science, technology, engineering, and math. So we see it is not just the rural women who face challenges. 43%, if you see, despite India producing highest share of female STEM graduates, we produce large number of women who are studying science, technology, engineering, math. But their participation in research and technology institutes is only 14%. So if you see the graduates, number of girls graduating is pretty high, and being absorbed in workforce eventually post receiving that education is so low. So while females comprise 50% of the STEM fields education, their participation dwindles to just 30%. So this is one data I thought just to bring it for some insight with respect to STEM fields. Now, coming to the skill and placement of women in skill and placement aspect. Now, in the previous slide, we were talking about the education side of it. Today, we'll be talking about this. In this slide, we'll be talking about the skill side of it. So there were 40% of the 7.3 million candidates were trained under this Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. That is a skill development program where the people are given skills on that will help them in getting a job. So we found that 40% of the people attending this program or this Yojana were women. But how it later translated was that 28% of the women received no offers as compared to 15% of men. They didn't receive offers. Why? Because many times when women are attaining that marriageable age, so she's often asked in interviews like, okay, we are taking you, but what if you get married, you will leave this job? Or let us say a woman is already married and settled, and then she's asked, okay, so what if you have a kid now? So will you ask for a transfer, or what will you ask for a maternity leave, or will you ask for a break? So all these factors that run in the heads of the management influences the kind of offers that a woman eventually receives. 30% of the women reported not having permission from the family as a reason for not accepting offers. So one side you face this obstacle of not receiving the offer, and the other side, some women are so unlucky that they did get offers, but then the family was not encouraging. Okay, you have received the education, so now that's fine, but why you need to work, and all those questions that we know came into picture, and so they were not able to receive the accept the offers. So this was what I could share about some findings from I started off with explaining what, first of all, we need to appreciate what a career is, and a career is not merely just having a job and earning an income or going out there for a distraction. It is about doing something, matching your skill, your experience, deserving of your qualification, and that gives you a sense of identity, a chance of growth, learn and develop personally and professionally. But and this was some of the data that I shared with you with respect to how the current picture looks like, and what were some of the soft findings of my own research paper. Now, this was the current picture. Now we'll be looking at, okay, these are the problems, but what can we do to create a gender balanced workspace, so that these obstacles can be minimized. So let us look at some of the suggestions. First, let's look at the education side of it. We need to make schools safer and affordable for girls in developing countries. This is very important. Second is we have to remove the gender bias in curriculum. Like, oh, this field is not meant for you. Many times it so happens that a girl is interested in a given field, and she's told this field is not suitable for you because you are a girl. So all those kind of gender bias in curriculum has to be removed. We need to get girls more interested in mathematics and science. It's not like you are a girl. So many times, HR is good for you, nursing is good for you, maybe software field is good for you. Any field she should be having the exposure and opportunity to take up that field. And one way of it could be by providing them with apprenticeship opportunities, where they will get a chance to actually figure out for themselves how this field is good for them, and also will help them in building networks to take up their career forward. In terms of public policy, it's important that good quality of data is generated by the standard agencies, and the policies are studied time and again to see whether we are framing gender sensitive and gender responsive policies that supports our women workforce. Third aspect that I would like to include is inclusivity and equal opportunities. So many times organizations have this standardized interviews and skill-based assessments when they go for hiring a candidate for a given position. So it's important that the HR or the line manager, whosoever is being involved for hiring and filling that position, is informed of this cultural bias, this unconscious bias that creeps in at the time of interviewing, where unfair questions are asked to women, like whether she will be able to take up the job, whether she will be able to continue in the job, because of factors that have no connection with the job, and these are personal factors. Another important thing that can be really helpful is to mentor female talent. That means men in senior management roles can mentor prospective female candidates to take up leadership roles. Also, women who in senior leadership roles can engage in mentoring programs with younger women, and they can themselves act as a role model to encourage them. Women who are experiencing career transitions or advancing within a company also need mentors, like they are moving to maybe a new geographical area or a new department, or maybe joining after a career break, or maybe having lack of support. So providing them with some kind of mentorship opportunities can be really helpful. Another important thing is that we talk about inclusivity, we talk about being creating gender responsive policies, we talk about being equal opportunity employers. So it's very important that we also remove this gender pay gap that still is plaguing many industries globally. So we see that women worldwide earn 81 cents for every US dollar earned by women. And despite efforts, the global pay gap between this, both the genders stays at a gap of 50%. Even in India, women get paid 20% less than women. So if for equal jobs, equal pay has to be monitored and administered. Another advice that can be useful, or suggestion that can be useful, is to promote shared parental leaves, because we see that with the birth of the first child or the second child, the career of a woman takes a back seat. So companies should actively promote shared parental leave. For example, the first few months in the initial years, when the child is really dependent on the mother takes up major of the leave. But in the second phase, when the child is relatively can be taken care by other people, then the leaves can be taken by the father as well. So promote shared parental leave to bring in kind of an element that the parenting is an equal responsibility of both the mother and the father, and this also allow the woman the opportunity to balance her career and family. Now, lastly, I will conclude with what are some of the successful measures some of the companies are doing is, first is they're having a rigorous recruitment and promotion procedures that is based on qualification, competencies, merit, and performance, and not on the basis of gender. So gender should not be the deciding factor. Then at the time of screening CVs, invite resumes from both men and women, and see that at least 40% of the candidates for the interviews are women. Try to get candidates women. Gender target in the recruitment process to redress the gender imbalance in the job applicants. Then, and promoting fully paid maternity leave of at least 16 weeks. And once women return from work, they can be given the opportunity of working maybe 1 or 2 hours less while receiving full pay, or maybe a combination of benefits like flexible working arrangements, or facilities like creche, on-site breastfeeding facilities. All these things can greatly enable a woman to not have to pick and choose or compromise on one thing for the sake of another. Sexual harassment policy should be set at zero tolerance company-wide. Then there should be events for networking, mentoring, and advisory services that allows exposure to the women to enhance their professional lives, and work from home, part-time work, and job sharing opportunities so that she can balance. So there are companies now who are doing this really successful, and maybe other companies can also. I have put examples of some companies who are really doing this on the right side really nicely. Maybe all companies should involve, this kind of thing to measure, and also try to build in tools to quantify, measure, and close the gender pay gap that I just discussed in one of the previous slides. For an example, I have put forward this EDGE certification. What is this? This is Economic Dividends for Gender Equality. It's a global assessment methodology that was launched by World Economic Forum in 2011. So this certification benchmarks the practices of your company with other companies, and also has metrics and accountability, and it measures practices and policies across 6 different areas like equal pay for equivalent work, recruitment and promotion, leadership development, training, mentoring, flexible working arrangements, company culture. So around these factors, it builds and frames policies and structures in such a way that it creates a working environment very conducive to working women and achieving work-life balance, so that women don't drop out from the workplace. Now, this EDGE certification is so many companies are already, this is basically a third-party certification where it comes, it audits the company existing practices, and then it certifies the companies and also suggests proper recommendation to make it a more inclusive workplace. So as of now, it is currently working with more than 100 companies in 40 countries. So different companies or corporates, they can look for certifications like this to audit their current working environment and make it more suitable for women. So that's all from my end. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you may please ask. I don't know why this light is shining on my face. It was visible to others also. I don't know. Maybe some problems. I will.
You got into your content and presentation so much, we would say. So that might be a technical feature where we put the green screen or the background ourselves, like it's a virtual screen.
Maybe
Thank you,
I'll
ma'am.
stop.
We have a lot many questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Stop sharing.
So we have questions, and we do have some very strict observations as well, where our participants are even trying to ask for a different approach towards feminist and a radical feminist as well. So I'm reading it from a participant, Ivan John. I wonder, one makes choices, yes, but isn't it really dependent on one's own understanding of what it means to be a feminist? A radical feminist may have a totally different take on prioritizing when compared to a feminist who takes a less radical stance. So you are talking about the corporate, you're talking about the human resource as well. And we did have our resource persons who knew things about the tribal areas, who knew things, be it in Sweden, who are working on all international, national, and interior aspects also. In your observation, looking at the human resource management domain, as well as the corporate or the industry, how do you see this radical feminist in the corporate, or there's no radical feminist at all?
See, in corporate currently, where let us say, I'll take the example of my company. So I don't see any radical feminism here. Also, I see there is no special kind of the benefits that I talked about, the allowances that I talked about, the policy structural changes that I talked about that can be incorporated to have more women participation or increase labor force participation in workforce. So it is still lagging behind. It is not happening. And because of which, and I'm not talking specific to Kuwait, because I have worked for a major portion of my life in India also. And my education itself is from India. So I experienced that many companies, the top tier companies have positively included many policies policy changes that allow women to now kind of balance. For example, one of my students, when she just shared with me, she works with KPMG. So she shared that after she got pregnant, she had kind of a lot of many health issues and complications. And the company really supported her in terms of not only during her pregnancy, but helping her return back successfully to work by providing her work from home options and different things. So yes, companies are making the initiative, but yes, there are a few good names. There are many steps need to be taken by many companies to further increase this.
Dr. Farah, can you stop sharing so that we can have a full view of yours?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So we are just looking at the
I
chat
can't-
box. You can just click on that share, and maybe the stop sharing will also bring back this thing. Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'll share the title screen of our FDP, which will also bring the change in the slide. Meanwhile, we shall move ahead for more questions from the side of participants, everyone. And while we see this, your observations on the chat.
There are a few questions in the Q&A
There are two
section also.
questions.
Dr. Naqvi, if you would like to answer, can I read it out to you?
Just give me 1 minute. I'm trying to just adjust the screen. I'm coming back for question answer. Just a minute.
Sure, sure. Meanwhile, we'd like to tell our participants that we'll be circulating the feedback and the attendance form only after the valedictory session now. And immediately after the Q&A session, we'll go to the valedictory session.
Yes, please. I'm ready to take the question.
Yes, we can see you now. One of the question by Mr. Arvind Kumar Gupta is. Let me get back to the question.
I
Yes.
think it's in the question answer tab.
Yes.
Yeah,
Is women's career trapped due to cultural reproduction, the culture of bearing domestic responsibilities with other works, and the culture of silence against different exploitations?
Okay. I think, yes, I did talk about loss of voice. I did talk about, I agree with him that many times, see, reproduction is a normal biological phenomena that every woman goes through at a stage in her life. But when women have good support systems, that not necessarily hinders them from achieving their career goals as well. But many times it so happens that if they don't have the support system, so they are forced to make a choice which is not so kind of friendly with their career. So like, I can work only part-time, or I cannot do this job, or I will take up a teaching job during this time. So that is a forced choice that gets them. And this happens because classically for years we have been conditioned that she is the primary caregiver. The parental responsibilities are not yet shared equally. And I already talked about the fair share of unpaid work being falling on her, where 92% of the women between the age of 16 to 59 are engaged in unpaid work compared to only 29% of men. So that tells me, see, all of us have just 24 hours in a day. And if the work responsibilities are not fairly and equally divided, and one person is made to feel like from morning to night, the entire whole house responsibility is on her. So because then women end up after experiencing motherhood, there is so much incidence of what we call postnatal depression, because they have to take care of themselves, going through the bodily changes that they experience after giving birth to the child. Then they have to also take care of the newborn, and first time mothers especially, they are not naturally trained to take care of the child, and they'll also learn in the process of raising a child how a child is raised. So things like that happen. And then on top of that, if you have work also and family responsibilities also, so many women experience burnout at that stage. So keeping that in mind, I do feel that yes, reproductive stage and this kind of conditioning and that we have do influence strongly a woman's career. But with little help extended, this can be very amicably managed also. That's what I feel.
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll pick up another question. We do have to think. Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you
just
think that
checking.
difference in salary or monthly income could also be one of the cause of stepping down from a leading career of a woman? Okay, if I see if the salary gap, let us say there are a husband and wife, okay, let us say both are working. Now, let us say both are working in the same position. For example, I will give the example of my own babysitter. So she happens to work with a juice shop here, Shaku Mako, that is called. And her husband also, they had met there actually. He also works with a juice shop, right? And both make you all kinds of cocktails and all. That is their work they used to do. Now this lady, she gets pregnant and her daughter is now 1.5 years old. So she initially, she didn't want to leave her job. She was ready to leave her daughter on a babysitter, who takes care of many children, a kind of nursery, and continue with her work of juice shop. But there were problems with managing the child. So then it was like one person has to take up some other job which allows you to stay more at home and for lesser hours. So automatically they had this conversation like who will drop from the job. My babysitter is pretty competitive and she wants to do something out of her life. So she was also trying to put her voice. But then it so happened that the salary of that the husband was drawing was relatively more compared to what she was drawing. So because of that reason, she was forced, okay, you leave this job and you take up some babysitting job. And that's how she started working at our place and things like that happened. So yes, this question that this person just asked us, it's very relevant. Many times when that consideration comes that one person has to drop from the job, then yes, people use their common sense. Okay, he so and so person is drawing more, so he should continue with his job rather than you. So this does come into picture. That is why it's very important that for equal pay should be administered for equal jobs, and this pay gap has to be worked about globally. Thank you. I'm sorry for giving a colored presentation throughout. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the presentation, so I just went ahead. Any other questions?
There is one. R. Akhila.
Good evening. Is there any way or solution so that we can motivate these women to be career oriented again, especially those who sacrifice their career for their family? What measures can be taken to bring them back? Yes, first of all, there is an element of self-motivation that while the time the woman is on career break, the family can, say that, okay, you are on a break, but don't you do, try to, let us say you are in a teaching job, okay, and you are forced to take a break for the sake of your family, 2 years, 3 years break. So it's not like she has to kill her interest also. Then she can keep her interest alive in participating in some talks and seminars and maybe things related to her field, so that even if she is passively engaged, at least she is not disengaged during that break. That is one thing that can be done. And after 2 or 3 years, then maybe she can be supported to take up the full income. So that support has to come from the family also. And that support has to come from the companies also, that they don't see the break of a woman as a career stop, but they see it, okay, she has taken this for this reason and she was actively engaged, in maybe not earning, but engaged. So she can be back to work. So it has to come from both the places. I can't hear you. I think you're saying something.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Audible? If now audible.
Yes, audible.
So we would like to request for the slide deck, like if you can share that with us, we would send it to all the participants through the folder that we'll be sending to all of them.
I
And-
will mail it to Miss Sanita Banerjee.
Sure.
I have her email ID. I'll
Perfect.
forward it to her. over
Perfect.
email.
And we request all the participants to be with us on this thing, because individually sending will be a tough thing. We'll send a complete set of all the presentations to all of you. So don't worry about that. So we are just looking for more questions if there are any, or we can ma'am, we're just scrolling through the chat and looking at the Q&A before we move on to the valedictory session. Yes, so we have taken up all the questions. Maybe this is the time that we invite all our participants and all our resource persons back to the session so that we can initiate our valedictory. So ma'am, thank you very much for being with us. Dr. Farah, thank you for
My
joining.
pleasure.
And you're still with us for the valedictory, so we'll be closing the session. I mean, in terms of the topic, but we want all our resource persons to be with us. So everyone, in this just 1 minute, after 1 minute, we shall start with the valedictory, and all our resource persons are also joining us. So be with us,
Sure.
and 1 minute, we shall initiate the proceedings for the closing ceremony, where we shall be felicitating our resource persons. We shall be hearing from one of the participants who wanted to say something like in voice. However, all of you are invited to put up your observations in the chat, and the final attendance, you call it attendance though, but the feedback form will be coming up during the valedictory session, along with a chance for you to write to us about your observations of this FDP. Give us this 1 minute, and we'll be back with the valedictory session proceedings.
Okay.
So without any delay, we feel, because our participants have also started putting their comments, so we believe we can start with thanking all the participants for being with us these 5 days, the half of the day, which is actually the busiest part for the teachers, because taking classes in the first half and then coming up and doing all those responsibilities, all those things, is quite a big thing. Thank you for being with us. And we also thank all your colleagues and your family members, as well as your organization, who have allowed you, who given this facility to you, that you could join us in this international FDP these 5 days. So we first should have the convener, and Dr. Anita Banerjee, who has been leading us in this FDP, and you have seen her coordinating with all the resource persons. So ma'am, first we invite you to please give your observations, as well as a report and an address to all the participants, as well as to all the resource persons. Dr. Anita Banerjee.
Please
So thank you.
start your
Parveen sir.
videos, all resource persons.
A very good afternoon.
Participants would like to see.
Yes, ma'am.
Please start your videos also, all the resource persons. Yes.
Yeah, its video is on, ma'am.
No, there, resource person should.
Yeah, resource persons, kindly share your videos. Okay, so a very good afternoon. So all the 5 days have been extremely fruitful, informative, productive, and we have got insights from various aspects of empowerment. To start with, Professor Vibhuti, on the first day, first session on 8th of May, she started her presentation on a very powerful presentation on empowerment through feminist movement, whereupon she has also highlighted some very important points. Women united will never be divided. And if you have to bring about a change, then you not only have to be vocal, but also be lung power and also your tongue power. The both things have to go together if you have to bring about changes. Professor Vaswani touched upon the empowerment through empowering the healthcare professional, because there is something there, even though everybody is highly educated professionals there, but she has given instances of how gender discrimination takes place even in the matter of healthcare professionals also. So also alongside, she has touched upon the connectivity of the medico-legal tie-up, and to fight against sexist and sexual violence. Professor Indira Ramarao gave us a very detailed and simplified lecture, which like a teacher teaching their students. It was so elaborate and so well presented on equity and equality. And she said that empowerment takes place only when equality is translated into action. our own in-house presenter, Dr. Supriya, she made a very beautiful pictorial presentation about how Sutradharani, in the form of Sutradharani, deconstructing the Diva. Then comes Dr. Paromita. She has given us how the movement has drifted from the welfarist paradigm to the empowerment movement. And through her case study, said that how now post-pandemic, the business has, it has become possible to generate business without investing much. Dr. Tara Nair said that finance is not certainly the panacea for all ills, but it should be looked upon in a broader aspect. Just giving loans and that to working of the shadow financing further, further pushes women into a vicious circle of debt. So what is required is generating employment. Professor Anna Usha Abraham talks about global gender gap and said that if we don't act now, it will take around 132 years to wipe out, to bring about parity. The global gender gap stands at 68.8% as per the data of 2022. Then Dr. Wahida Naina talked about the legal aspects and said that it's so shocking to learn that 95.5% of the offenders of sexual violence were known to the victims. So this clearly drives home the point that we need to look into ourselves instead of saying that, okay, government has to frame the laws, the society has to change, but who is the society? It's we who have to bring about the change. It is charity should begin from ourselves, that we in our own little way, step by step, we have to make ourselves vocal. We have to say no, we have to come out of that inhibitions and fear and that what will people say, what will the others say. So unless we express ourselves, there is no way that we can bring about change. And if the 95.5% of the offenders of sexual violence are known to the victims, you can think what a miserable society that we are heading towards. I mean, we have to bring about the change. So, and there should be more. Dr. Linda's presentation today was about enhancing global solidarity. Everywhere, in every aspect, women are presented less. 1995, she draws upon the various conferences on women that we have held so far, and there were many lacunas in them. There was a lack of analysis of structural inequalities. What she stresses is that there ought to be more intersectionality, interconnectedness of social identities. Then only we can think about bringing about a proper change. And then we have after that, and also a very interesting part about ecology, intersectionality of ecology. Dr. Farah talks about a balanced, she talks about the steady growth of steady climb of women in career. She talks about how the career of women goes through many complexities. She talks about the decision tree model in the family. So what is required is a gender balanced workspace. A gender balanced workspace will further help in promoting empowerment. So what lessons I have learned and what my observation is that a common thread runs along all the discussion is that it is the women who has to muster enough courage to come out of all those fears and inhibitions and express herself, and for that she needs the family support. So everything starts from, so we need a social revolution. Then comes your economic revolution and revolution in other spheres. We need a societal change, a social revolution. We always talk about, okay, bottom-up approach and also not a top-down approach. But I think somewhere along the line, even urban women, urban families are still practicing this kind of severe discrimination, which is very tacit. And we accept it as a part of the system, no matter how educated we are. We accept it as a fate. Okay, this has to be here. It has happened always. I mean, no matter how you can say that men always has to be ahead. There is a limitation to which women can move ahead. So we have to break that glass ceiling. Only the 0.2% women breaking the glass ceiling is not glass ceiling. Glass ceiling will be broken only when all of us have we don't have to say, oh, so you're acting like a man. We are a power. Man is not a measuring rod of success of a woman. We don't have to say that you behave like a man, that you are like, we are a Shakti in our own self, a force to reckon with in our own self. So that is my observation. And this is just a summary of what I felt I should be sharing with you. I thank each and everyone, all of the panelists who are extremely esteemed, highly learned scholars who have given their time for this, devoted their time for this presentation. And my special thanks to, I'm really grateful to Professor Vibhuti for connecting all of them together and bringing them on this platform, and all the participants, and this huge response that we have got from the participants. It was absolutely enormously, what should I say, amazing. And this kind of webinar or this kind of week-long program, I don't think anybody has had the experience to witness and also call it a grand success. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Anita. Thank you very much. And indeed, we are really pleased to have this galaxy of scholars who have enriched us from all horizons of learning, understanding not just feminism, but understanding how women have been moving forward, how we need to prepare ourselves, and how we need to move beyond a stereotyped acceptance as well. Thank you very much. So this is a moment we are getting these comments in the webinar chat as well, which can also go as a participant's feedback, because all our participants are in the webinar mode. And yes, Dr. Paramita Saha is also joining us. So this voice is from her side.
Can we mute
yes.
it from ours?
Ma'am, is there some, yeah, is there, because she's trying to switch on the cameras, will be with us very soon. So we have a, Professor Ivan John has said, the 10 session FDP was a treat. It was like a super intense crash course laced with hands-on experiences of each resource person scholar sharing from an area of her expertise. True that some sessions were lighter than others. This maintained a judicious balance as a result. It was a joy to have so many takeaways during my summer vacation. Thank you for sharing your resources. Thank you to the organizers. So thank you to Professor Dr. Vibhuti Patel. This thank you goes from our side as well, ma'am, because you have been the most common presence. So you have been the thread to connect all the resource persons with the participants and with us. Thank you.
I'm really
So
humbled.
this is a moment we will bring up the felicitation certificates, ma'am. So we shall bring up the felicitation certificates for all the resource persons. Before that, we are also getting ready to put up our feedback link. So dear participants, we are sharing with you the valedictory session feedback link, and be with us so that we can share with you the information about the certificates as well. So sharing the screen and having this privilege on behalf
Chandan
of...
Kumar wants to speak in Hindi. We'll have to translate it.
Yeah, ma'am. But the thing here is that because our participants have been kept in the webinar attendance, not as a panelist.
Okay.
So it would take some time to create the panel link. So technically, like, we won't be able to have him. But yes, we really appreciate Chandanji. You have been quite an active participant. We could see your questions and comments right from the first day. Thank you. If you can write here, we will be very happy to put it as an audio. Yes. Yes. So we'll just... Yes, ma'am. I hope the sound from our side is also audible, Dr. Vibhuti.
I can't hear.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask one thing. If I wish to attend the lectures that I have missed of other esteemed speakers, so where can I get to listen them? Can a link be shared?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The recordings of all the sessions will be available with us, and we shall be sharing with everyone for sure, without any doubt. Thank you. So everyone, join us. And this is the felicitation. This is honoring the resource persons, the experts, in this International Faculty Development Program organized by the Department of Management and Social Sciences, Amity University in Tashkent. On behalf of the fraternity that we have around the globe, as known as Amity family, we thank all the resource persons and we appreciate their contribution, and we really look forward for an unending association with all of you. First of all, the one who has led us as a captain that way in the resource persons, Professor Vibhuti Patel, Vice President, Indian Association of Women's Studies. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. And on behalf of the complete Amity family, we thank you. So moving from this felicitation, we are taking you to Professor Veena Vaswani, Director, Center of Ethics. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. Your learning, your observations, your insights have helped each of the participants. Thank you, Professor Veena Vaswani. The next certificate, the felicitation, is for our resource person, Professor Indira Rama Rao, formerly Professor of Sociology, Center of Ethics, University of Mysuru, Karnataka. Thank you very much, Professor Indira Rama Rao, for being with us and joining us in this international FDP. Now, this was day 2's first session. Moving ahead, Dr. Supriya Banerjee, who's also there with us in this panel, Assistant Professor, Amity University in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, the home campus, the organizing campus that way, part of our team, part of the resource persons as well. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. We really appreciate your contribution. Professor Paramita Saha, Professor, Department of Economics, Director, Women's Study Center, Tirupura University, India. Professor Saha, we appreciate and we express our gratitude for your participation as a resource person in this International Faculty Development Program. Dr. Tara Nair, Director, Research, Workfare and Free Foundation, Ajivika Bureau, Bangalore, India. Thank you very much, Dr. Tara. We appreciate your contribution and the extensive, comprehensive learning that we got from you. Thank you very much for being with us. We have got another resource person, Ms. Anna Usha Abraham, former Chief Corporate Communication, Mukund Limited, India. Thank you very much, Professor Abraham, for being with us. Your expertise, your insights from a different specific domain also helped us know which side we should be going, and all researchers, all participants highly appreciated it. Dr. Wahida Naina, independent researcher and consultant from India. Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate and put on record our appreciation for you as a resource person. Dr. Linda Lane, PhD, Senior Lecturer, Department of Social Work, University of Gothenburg, Sweden. Today, we heard you in the first session. We appreciate and we are thankful for your participation. And moving ahead to Dr. Farah Naqvi, Head of Learning and Development, Knox Management, Kuwait, Adjunct Professor, HRM, American University of Kuwait. Thank you very much, ma'am. So this galaxy of our 10 resource persons is here. We thank them on behalf of the Amity fraternity, and we also thank all the participants. And we won't miss this chance to invoke appreciations and gratitude towards our founder president, Dr. Ashok Chauhan, our Chancellor, Dr. Atul Chauhan, our Trustee, Mr. Amol Chauhan, our Group Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Gurinder Singh Ji, our Director, Mr. Babur Abdullayev, and our Deputy Director, Amity University in Tashkent, Dr. Naina Chaudhary, along with all the participants, all the faculty members from Amity University in Tashkent. We thank all the resource persons again, and all our participants. Please note, we have the highest appreciation for you. We do have appreciation for every participant who joined us and remained with us. Based on the Zoom attendance, which is counted by Zoom, your participation e-certificates will be shared after 19th of May. We'll take 1 week to sort the attendance. If you do not receive the certificate before 22nd of May, please write to us on the email ID mentioned in the brochure. We thank you on behalf of the organizing team. So from our side, we thank our IT team at Noida. We thank our IT team in the Tashkent campus as well. And we shall be moving ahead to close this, but we wish to take this opportunity to request Dr. Vibhuti to say a few words so that we can close this successful circle of coming together on the same point from where we started. Ma'am.
Yeah, I think this is a collective effort and it's a labor of love. My respect for Dr. Anita Banerjee, who was in the Forum for Fast Justice, that was created after Justice Verma Commission's report on the Nirbhaya tragedy. And she was in Andaman. I knew her as Anita Mondal. And when this email came from Uzbekistan and Banerjee and all of you, and Usha invited my attention that what is this? And then we had a clarification. And that is the reason that I really suggested the names of, I was 100% sure that this 10 experts who are committed, who are not only good public intellectual, but they are committed to the community. They are committed to reach out to more people, and especially the question on gender issues. So I think that is how we started working. And then when it came to approaching, because then Dr. Anita, when she said that there were 2,000 seats, because that's generally you have on Zoom platform 500 seats. So we said, how, at what level should we popularize the course, no? And then we approached the women's rights organizations, legal groups, trade unions, self-help organizations. Now there are some federations, academic institutions, women's studies centers, and Indian Association of Women's Studies, all those who are active in that, life members. And that's how we got this whole community of interdisciplinary participation. No, so where we have professors of English literature, and we also have law teachers, and we also have a community-based workers and feminist activists and journalists. All of them are here on this participate, and that made the overall exercise very fruitful and engaging, because continuously from really being online for 3 hours from Monday to Friday, it demands very great commitment on the part of even participants. No? And it went off very well. And there was no, generally you have a break after 90 minutes in refresher course and orientation programs and workshop sessions. Here we did not even have that. Immediately after the first 90 minutes, we had a second presentation. And all of them were theoretically very, very robust, analytically very rigorous, with lot of ground level experiences. It was with that. That's why I think engagement of the participation remained. And I think we, some of the participants who attended all sessions, like even it was Anna Usha Abraham who inspired me to attend all the sessions, because earlier I was thinking that first session I will be there, and then you are there. No, your team is very active. But then she said she was attending all. Then I said, okay, I'll do the same. And I have already heard all these experts on several platforms, but it was really very, very refreshing. And it was a learning experience for me too. And it gave me tonic. It served me as a multivitamin and very, very engaging lectures, all of them. It was a very good exercise on the part of organizers and the resource persons. We worked in unison and seamlessly everything flew. The flow of event was also so satisfying. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. It was actually, just as Parveen sir has said, it was, you acted as a thread. And I thank everyone multiple times, also the participants who have really sat through all the 3 hours for all 5 days, maximum number of participants. Apart from the panelists, I would additionally like to thank my colleagues, Dr. Shalki and Professor Parveen Sharma sir, who have all the time given me unflinching support, not skipping their lunch at times, designing the brochures, connecting, preparing the feedback form, and multiple other tasks, and now also some more tasks are left.
That too during
Also
exam
the IT
time.
support team here.
It is exam time for all. All of
I can't hear. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So it was really, once again, I thank and looking forward to more cooperation in the days to come. I really look forward to it. Thank you.
So now you know 10
Thank you,
experts.
Dr.
Not
Nita.
one.
Thank you, everyone. So we would take leave. However, we can call it a new beginning, and we wish everyone good health, prosperity in learning and in coming together. And we really look forward that next time when we organize again an FDP, that will again be welcomed and joined by all of you and all your colleagues as well. We again thank all the resource persons, and we thank all the participants on behalf of Amity University in Tashkent. And we take your permission, all our resource persons, to close this FDP for now, with an assurance that we shall come back again with more learning and more strong collaborations. Thank you very much. A huge round of applause for everyone. Thank you. Bye, ma'am. Thank you, participants.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, goodbye.
Bye.